I'll never forget the moment my 12-year marriage shattered like cheap glass. Marcus stood in our attorney's office, his designer suit immaculate, his jaw set with that arrogance I'd somehow missed during our years together. The mahogany conference table between us felt like an ocean. "Let's be honest here," he said, leaning back in his leather chair with a smirk. "Luna contributed nothing to this marriage. I built my company from the ground up. The house, the cars, the lifestyle, all me." My attorney, Patricia Chen, glanced at me with barely concealed fury. But I sat frozen, my hands trembling in my lap. Nothing. He'd said nothing. The man I'd supported through business school. The man whose shirts I'd ironed at 5 a.m. before my own shifts. The man whose parents I'd nursed through illness while he closed deals across the country. Nothing. Marcus, his attorney, a slick man named Richard Wolfe, interrupted gently. "Perhaps we should discuss the asset division more diplomatically." "No." Marcus's eyes found mine, cold and dismissive. "I'm tired of pretending. She was a stay-at-home wife for 8 of our 12 years. She didn't earn. She didn't build. She just existed in the life I created." The words hit like physical blows. Around us, the city hummed through the 40th floor windows. Oblivious, indifferent. Patricia's pen stopped moving. "Mr. Vex, I strongly advise." "The truth," Marcus interrupted. "That Luna spent her days shopping, lunching with friends, and redecorating rooms that were already perfect. That's not contribution. That's hobby time funded by my income." Something inside me cracked. Not broke, that would come later. Just cracked like ice before the fall. "I see," I heard myself say, my voice surprisingly steady. "Patricia, can we request a forensic financial analysis?" Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. "Analyze away. The numbers don't lie, Luna. You contributed nothing of financial value." 2 weeks later, I sat in Patricia's office again, but this time without Marcus. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across her desk, where a business card lay between us. "Dr. Sarah Okonkwo," Patricia said, sliding the card toward me. "She's the best forensic economist in the state. Specializes in quantifying unpaid domestic labor." I stared at the card. Forensic economist. I didn't even know such a profession existed. Can she really calculate what I did? My voice sounded small, uncertain. "Luna." Patricia leaned forward, her expression fierce. What Marcus said in that meeting wasn't just cruel, it was legally idiotic. In this state, we recognize the economic value of domestic contributions. Dr. Okonkwo has testified in hundreds of cases. She's made judges weep and opposing counsel resign. How much will it cost? Nothing up front. She works on contingency in cases like yours. Patricia's smile turned sharp. She despises men like Marcus. She'll eviscerate him. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest bedroom of my sister's apartment, my temporary refuge, and let the memories flood in. 2012. Marcus in our tiny studio apartment, panicking over business school applications. Me working double shifts as a dental hygienist, typing his essays after midnight because his handwriting was illegible. 2014. His acceptance to Wharton. My job transfer request denied. My career paused so he could pursue his dream in Philadelphia. 2015. His father's stroke. Me becoming the primary caregiver while Marcus traveled for internships. Meal prep, medication schedules, physical therapy appointments. 2017. His company's founding. Our savings, including my inheritance from my grandmother, invested as startup capital. "It's our future," he'd said. 2018. My choice to stay home. Not a choice, really. His business demanded 80-hour weeks. Someone needed to maintain our life, host his investors, network at charity events that generated his clients. Nothing, he'd called it. Nothing. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo's office overlooked the harbor, all glass and steel and quiet competence. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and an even sharper handshake. "Mrs. Vex," she said, gesturing to a chair. Patricia filled me in. "I've heard worse than your husband's comments, but not by much." "He thinks I did nothing," I said quietly. "Then he's not just cruel. He's mathematically illiterate." She opened a leather portfolio. "Tell me about a typical week during your marriage. Start from the beginning." For 2 hours I talked. She didn't interrupt, just took notes with frightening speed. When I finally finished, emotionally drained, she looked up with something like satisfaction in her eyes. "Luna, I'm going to ask you to do something difficult. I need you to reconstruct your activities. All of them, for each year of your marriage. Every task, every responsibility, every hour. Can you do that?" "I think so." "Good." Her smile was predatory. "Because I'm going to assign a dollar value to every single second your husband dismissed as nothing." For 3 weeks I lived in the past. I filled legal pads with lists, recovered old calendars from cloud storage, scrolled through years of photos that captured the truth behind the scenes. The business school years. My 50-hour work weeks funding our life. My weekends typing his papers, creating his spreadsheets, researching his case studies. My foregone promotion because I couldn't travel for the required training. The caretaking years. His father's daily needs. Doctor's appointments, insurance battles, home modifications. His mother's grief counseling after her husband's death. The hours I spent mediating family conflicts so Marcus could focus on work. The company building years. The networking dinners I organized. The investor relationships I nurtured. The clients' wives I befriended. The household management that allowed him to work without distraction. Every list grew longer. Every memory cut deeper. But with each word I wrote, something else grew too: clarity. Dr. Okonkwo called on a Wednesday morning. "Can you come to my office today? I have your preliminary assessment." I arrived within an hour. She had charts, graphs, spreadsheets covering her conference table like a paper army. "Sit down, Luna." Her voice was gentle now, almost reverent. "What I'm about to show you will change everything." She walked me through it methodically. Every task I'd performed, cross-referenced with market rates for equivalent professional services. Personal assistant, house manager, caregiver, private chef, social coordinator, investment partner, business consultant. The numbers climbed, and climbed, and climbed. "This is just years 1 through 6, she said. "Before you became a full-time homemaker. Your economic contribution during this period, including opportunity costs from your paused career." She turned a page, showed me a figure. My breath caught. That's more than Marcus earned during those same years." "Exactly." Her smile could have cut glass. "And we haven't even started on the last 6 years yet." Dr. Okonkwo's final report arrived like a beautiful weapon. Bound, professional, devastating. I read it alone in my sister's apartment, tears streaming down my face. Not from sadness anymore, from vindication. Total economic contribution of Luna Vex to marital partnership, 2012 to 2024, $2,847,392. The breakdown was meticulous. Unpaid domestic labor, cooking, cleaning, household management, $423,000. Childcare and elder care services provided, $687,000. Career opportunity costs, lost wages, lost promotions, lost retirement contributions, $891,000. Direct financial contributions, income, inheritance, investment, $356,000. Business development support, networking, client relations, administrative, $490,392. But it was the footnote that destroyed me, in the best way. Note: this valuation deliberately excludes emotional labor, which, while economically valuable, cannot be accurately quantified. It also excludes the multiplier effect of support services enabling Mr. Vex's business success, which conservative estimates suggest doubled his effective productivity. Nothing. He'd called it nothing. Marcus's deposition was scheduled for a Monday. I wasn't required to attend, but Patricia suggested I might want to watch via video feed from the adjacent room. It'll be satisfying, she promised. She wasn't wrong. Marcus arrived confident, almost cocky. He wore his power suit, his expensive watch, his arrogance like cologne. Richard Wolff briefed him in whispers, but Marcus kept waving him off. Patricia started gently. Mr. Vex, in your previous statements, you claimed your wife contributed nothing to your marriage. Do you stand by that characterization? Financially. Absolutely. Define financially. For the record. Money earned. Assets built. Revenue generated. He shrugged. Luna didn't do any of that. I see. Patricia slid a document across the table. This is Dr. Sarah Okonkwo's forensic economic analysis. Have you reviewed it? Marcus barely glanced at it. I don't need an economist to tell me that housework isn't a job. In the viewing room, I watched Patricia's expression transform into something beautiful and terrible. Mr. Vex, are you aware that in this jurisdiction, economic contribution includes the market value of unpaid labor? That's absurd. Are you aware that your wife invested her entire inheritance, $127,000, in your startup capital in 2017? His jaw tightened. That was our money. Are you aware that your wife's income funded your business school education in full, totaling $89,000 in tuition and living expenses? I would have gotten loans. Are you aware that your wife provided 4,300 hours of elder care for your parents, which would have cost $687,000 at market rates for professional care? Marcus's confidence began to crack. She loved my parents. Are you aware, Patricia's voice dropped, became surgical, that Dr. Okonkwo's analysis values your wife's total economic contribution to this marriage at $2.8 million? The room went silent. That's ridiculous, Marcus sputtered. You can't just make up numbers. Patricia slid another document forward. This is Dr. Okonkwo's CV, PhD in economics from MIT. Expert testimony in 847 cases. Published in 23 peer-reviewed journals. Would you like to challenge her methodology? Marcus looked at Richard, who was suddenly very interested in his notes. Let's discuss your business, Mr. Vex. Vex Solutions reported $1.2 million in revenue last year, correct? Yes. And in your own deposition, you stated you worked 80-hour weeks to build this company? I did. Who managed your household during those 80-hour weeks? Luna, but who entertained your investors and clients? Luna was the hostess, but who maintained the relationships with the Carrington family, which led to your largest contract? Marcus went pale. The Carrington contract, $400,000 annually, had come through me. Through months of cultivation with Margaret Carrington at charity events. Through genuine friendship that Marcus had later leveraged. She was socializing, he said weakly. She was conducting unpaid business development. Patricia leaned forward. Mr. Vex, do you maintain that cooking your meals, managing your home, caring for your parents, investing her inheritance in your company, and generating your largest client relationship constitutes nothing? The silence stretched. I watched Marcus's face cycle through emotions. Disbelief, anger, calculation, and finally, fear. 3 days after the deposition, Richard Wolff called Patricia with a settlement offer. They want to talk, Patricia told me over coffee. Marcus is rattled. Good. He's offering 40% of marital assets, including the house. What's that worth? About $1.9 million total. He paused. It's a good offer, Luna. Most wives get less. But Dr. Okonkwo proved I contributed $2.8 million. In economic value, yes. But translating that to asset division is complex. The judge might award 45%, maybe 50% if we're lucky. I stared into my coffee, thinking. The safe choice would be to accept. Walk away with financial security, start fresh. But safe choices were what got me here. No, I said. We go to trial. Patricia's eyes gleamed. I was hoping you'd say that. The next month was a blur of preparation. Dr. Okonkwo refined her analysis, adding new dimensions I hadn't even considered. The psychological value of stability I provided, enabling Marcus's risk-taking in business. The social capital I built through community involvement. The brand reputation I maintained through philanthropic work under the Vex name. We compiled evidence. Photos of me at business dinners, smiling beside Marcus. Emails coordinating investor meetings. Thank you notes from his clients' spouses. Calendar entries showing years of my life organized around his schedule. My sister Jade became my rock. She'd hated Marcus for years. Too smooth, she always said, and watching her righteousness fuel my courage gave me strength. You're going to destroy him, she said one night, helping me organize documents. I'm going to show the truth, I corrected. He'll destroy himself. But secretly I hoped she was right. The courtroom felt like a theater on opening day. Judge Catherine Brennan presided, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for fairness and zero tolerance for nonsense. Marcus sat across the aisle, looking smaller somehow, less certain. Richard Wolfe whispered constantly in his ear. Patricia's opening statement was a masterpiece. Your Honor, this case is about a fundamental question. What is a marriage worth? Not in romantic terms, but in economic reality. For 12 years, Luna Vex devoted her life to building a partnership. She invested money, time, career prospects, and labor. In return, her husband now claims she contributed nothing. We're here to prove otherwise. With mathematics, with evidence, with the truth. Richard's opening was predictable. Your Honor, Mr. Vex built a successful company through his own effort. While we acknowledge Mrs. Vex's support, we must distinguish between being a supportive spouse and being an economic partner. The law recognizes this distinction. Judge Brennan's expression gave nothing away. Call your first witness, Ms. Chen. The plaintiff calls Dr. Sarah Okonkwo. Dr. Okonkwo took the stand like she owned it. Calm, authoritative, unshakable. Patricia walked her through the analysis methodically. Every number, every assumption, every calculation. The courtroom fell silent as the figures mounted, displayed on a large screen for everyone to see. Dr. Okonkwo, Patricia said, in your professional opinion, what was Luna Vex's total economic contribution to this marriage? $2,847,392, as detailed in my report. And how does this compare to Marcus Vex's earnings during the same period? Mr. Vex's total earnings from all sources during the marriage were approximately $2.1 million. Mrs. Vex's contribution exceeded his by roughly $750,000. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Brennan's gavel cracked once. Silence fell. Richard Wolfe stood for cross-examination, but he looked uneasy. Dr. Okonkwo, isn't it true that these calculations rely on hypothetical market rates? They rely on established industry standards for professional services, yes. But Mrs. Vex wasn't a professional chef or housekeeper. No, she was better. She provided customized, consistent, high-quality services that any household executive would charge premium rates for. Isn't it true that she would have performed many of these tasks regardless, even without marriage? Dr. Okonkwo smiled. Mr. Wolfe, by that logic, your client would have eaten and slept regardless of his business, so we shouldn't count his work hours either. The question isn't what people would do naturally. It's what they did in service of the partnership. Richard sat down. He had no more questions. Taking the stand was surreal. I swore to tell the truth, then looked out at the courtroom. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. Patricia started gently. Luna, tell us about the early years of your marriage. I did. I talked about our studio apartment, about working double shifts, about typing his essays until my eyes burned, about the choices that never felt like choices. When did you stop working outside the home? 2018. Marcus's company was taking off. He needed me to manage everything else. Did you want to stop working? Paused, feeling the weight of honesty. I wanted to support my husband. I wanted our marriage to succeed. I thought that's what partnership meant. What was a typical day like? I described it. Rising at 5:30 a.m. to prepare Marcus's breakfast and pack his lunch. Managing contractors for home repairs. Grocery shopping with meal planning for his dietary restrictions. Coordinating his dry cleaning, his car maintenance. His gift purchases for business associates. Exercising to maintain the appearance he preferred. Attending charity events to network. Researching his competitors to brief him. Listening to his stress and offering solutions. Luna, Patricia said softly, what did you think when Marcus said you contributed nothing? For the first time my voice broke. I thought I'd wasted 12 years of my life. I thought maybe I was crazy for believing my work mattered. I stopped, gathered myself. I thought I'd failed. Do you still think that? No. I looked directly at Marcus now. He was staring at the table. Now I know the truth. I didn't fail. I succeeded at building something beautiful, and he was too blind to see it. Richard Wolff called Marcus to the stand, trying to rehabilitate his image. But Marcus was his own worst enemy. Mr. Vex, Richard began, did you appreciate your wife's support during your marriage? Of course. Luna was a great wife. Did you intend to minimize her contributions when you made those statements? I just meant financially. Patricia objected. Asked and answered, Your Honor. We've established what financially means. Sustained. Judge Brennan looked at Marcus. Move on, Mr. Wolff. But Patricia's cross-examination was what we'd been waiting for. Mr. Vex, you stated Luna contributed nothing financially. Yet she invested $127,000 of her inheritance in your company, correct? Yes, but... Yes or no, please? Yes. She earned the money that paid for your business school tuition? Yes. She provided elder care that would have cost $687,000? Those are inflated numbers. Yes or no, Mr. Vex? Did she provide that care? Yes. Did you pay her for any of these services? We were married. Yes or no? No. Patricia paused, let it sink in. Mr. Vex, in 2019, you told Philadelphia Magazine that your success was built on an incredible support system at home. Were you lying to the magazine? Or lying in your deposition? Marcus's face flushed. I wasn't lying either time. So Luna did contribute to your success. Indirectly. Is there a difference, economically speaking, between indirect and direct contribution to household income? I don't. If Luna had hired someone to perform all the services she provided, and you had paid for those services, would that have reduced your disposable income? Yes, but by approximately how much annually? Marcus looked trapped. I don't know. Dr. Okonkwo calculated roughly $237,000 per year. Does that sound unreasonable? It sounds like creative accounting. Mr. Vex, are you an economist? No. Are you a forensic accountant? No. Yet you feel qualified to dismiss Dr. Okonkwo's analysis. I know my own life. Patricia's smile was devastating. Do you? Because you seem to have forgotten half of it. Patricia called 3 more witnesses. First, Margaret Carrington, society maven and wife of Marcus's largest client. Mrs. Carrington, how did your husband's company come to contract with Vex Solutions? Through Luna, actually. Margaret's voice was cool, refined. We met at a charity auction. She was delightful, intelligent, genuine. We became friends. When my husband mentioned needing a consultant, I thought of Marcus because I trusted Luna's judgment. Did Marcus initiate this relationship? No. He benefited from it, certainly. But Luna built it. Next, Marcus's former business partner, David Chen, who'd left the company in 2020. Mr. Chen, you worked with Marcus for 3 years. What role did Luna play in the business? David didn't hesitate. Luna was the unofficial COO of Marcus's life, which meant she was crucial to the company. She managed everything that would have distracted him. Scheduled his travel, entertained clients, even proofread major proposals. Marcus used to joke that Luna was his secret weapon. Did he compensate her? No. He probably should have. Finally, my former supervisor from the dental office, Dr. Helen Rodriguez. Dr. Rodriguez, what kind of employee was Luna Vex? Exceptional. Smart, reliable, compassionate. I was devastated when she left. Why did she leave? She said her husband needed her at home. I tried to convince her otherwise. She was on track for office manager, but she'd made her choice. Helen's voice softened. I always wondered if she regretted it. Did she ever express regret? No. Luna doesn't complain. She just sacrifices. Richard Wolff's defense strategy crumbled quickly. He called Marcus's accountant, trying to minimize the marital assets, but Patricia got him to admit that Marcus had invested heavily in cryptocurrency. $340,000 worth that he hadn't initially disclosed. He called Marcus's business mentor, hoping for testimony about Marcus's sole responsibility for the company's success. Instead, the mentor said, Marcus worked hard, but he couldn't have done it without stability at home. He told me many times how lucky he was that Luna handled everything else. Richard even called Marcus's mother, a desperate move. But Elizabeth Vex was a wild card. Mrs. Vex, Richard began, you've known Luna for 12 years. Would you say she supported your son? Supported. Elizabeth's voice shook. That girl saved our lives. When my husband had his stroke, Luna moved us into her home. She fed him, bathed him, took him to therapy. She held my hand when I cried. She gave us dignity. Tears ran down her face. And my son just told her she did nothing. I didn't raise him to be that cruel. Richard tried to salvage it. But in terms of financial contribution, money isn't everything, young man. Luna gave us herself. That's worth more than all my son's wealth combined. Judge Brennan called a recess. In the hallway, I saw Marcus arguing with Richard, his face red. Elizabeth approached me instead. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have said something years ago. You deserved better. I hugged her, this woman I'd cared for, and felt something release in my chest. Patricia's closing argument was brief but devastating. Your Honor, the evidence is overwhelming. Luna Vex contributed $2.8 million in economic value to this marriage. She invested money, labor, career prospects, and years of her life. In return, her husband claims she did nothing. The law recognizes that marriage is an economic partnership. Luna fulfilled her side of that partnership with excellence. She doesn't seek vengeance, just fairness. She asks this court to recognize the truth that her husband refused to see. Her work had value. Her life had worth. Her contribution was real. We request equitable distribution that reflects her actual contribution, 60% of marital assets, totaling approximately $2.85 million. Richard's closing was weaker, more defensive. Your Honor, Dr. Okonkwo's analysis, while impressive, relies on inflated market rates and speculative opportunity costs. Mrs. Vex made choices in this marriage, as we all do. Mr. Vex shouldn't be penalized for his success or for Mrs. Vex's choices. We request a standard, equitable distribution of 40% to Mrs. Vex. Judge Brennan took one day to deliberate. The courtroom was packed when we returned. News of the case had spread. Apparently, a husband claiming his wife did nothing made for compelling headlines. Judge Brennan entered, and we all rose. I've reviewed the evidence carefully, she began. This case presents important questions about how we value domestic labor and partnership in marriage. Mr. Vex, I found your testimony concerning. Not because you built a successful business, that's admirable, but because you genuinely seem to believe your wife contributed nothing to that success. This reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of partnership. Dr. Okonkwo's analysis is thorough, well-documented, and persuasive. While I won't adopt every figure at face value, the core principle is sound. Mrs. Vex provided valuable economic contributions that enabled Mr. Vex's success. I find that Mrs. Vex's contributions to this marriage were substantial and measurable. Therefore, I award her 58% of all marital assets, including. She listed everything. The house, the investment accounts, Marcus's business equity, the cryptocurrency he'd hidden. The total. $2,912,000. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Patricia squeezed my hand. Additionally, Judge Brennan continued, I'm ordering Mr. Vex to pay $125,000 in legal fees and costs, given his conduct prolonged this litigation unnecessarily. She looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Vex, I hope you learned something from this experience. Marriage is a partnership. Partnership requires recognition. You failed to recognize your wife's value until it cost you dearly. Don't make that mistake again. She struck her gavel. Court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Patricia handled them gracefully while I stood in shock, watching Marcus emerge with Richard. He looked broken, not financially but spiritually. Our eyes met across the crowd. I expected to feel triumph. Instead, I felt tired and free. Jade picked me up, whooping with joy. You did it. You destroyed him. I didn't destroy him, I said quietly. I just proved I existed. That night, alone in my sister's apartment, I finally cried. Not from sadness or anger, but from relief. 12 years of doubt, of wondering if my work mattered, of feeling invisible. It was over. Mattered. The court said so. The evidence proved it. And I believed it. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Marcus. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. Jade urged me to block him. Patricia advised maintaining no contact. But I was curious. What's there to say? I was wrong. About everything. I'm sorry. Okay. That's it. Okay. What do you want, Marcus? Forgiveness. Understanding. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally. I want to understand how I became someone who could say you did nothing. When did I stop seeing you? I thought about not responding. About letting him stew in his belated recognition. But the truth was I was curious too. Coffee. Public place. 1 hour. We met at a cafe near the harbor. Neutral territory. Marcus arrived early, looking exhausted. He'd lost weight. Gained lines around his eyes. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. This doesn't change anything. I know. He stirred his coffee aimlessly. I've been in therapy. Trying to figure out how I became that person. And I got caught up in measuring everything by money. Revenue, assets, net worth. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that life has other metrics. He looked up, his eyes genuine for the first time in years. You gave me everything that mattered, and I couldn't see it because it didn't show up in a bank statement. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know that you weren't crazy. The problem was never you, it was me. I was blind and arrogant, and I took you for granted until you were gone. His voice cracked. And now I'm living in an empty house, working 80-hour weeks for a company that suddenly feels pointless, and I finally understand what you gave me. But it's too late. I sipped my coffee, processing. You're right. It is too late. I know. But Marcus, thank you for saying it. We sat in silence for a moment, 2 people who used to be everything to each other, now just strangers sharing coffee. Are you happy? He asked finally. I'm getting there. I smiled and meant it. I'm buying a condo downtown. Starting a business. Consulting for entrepreneurs on household systems. Turns out I'm good at organization. You always were. I know. Now everyone else does too. 6 months after the trial, I stood in my new condo, all glass and light and mine, preparing for my first solo dinner party. Dr. Okonkwo was coming. Patricia. Margaret Carrington. Helen Rodriguez. Elizabeth Vex, even. The women who'd seen me, supported me, proven I existed. My business, Vex Consulting, I kept the name out of spite and pride, was thriving. Entrepreneurs, mostly men, hired me to set up the infrastructure they'd been ignoring. Systems for household management, family coordination, life optimization. I charged premium rates. They paid happily. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus had spent years dismissing this work, and now I was making 6 figures doing it for others. My phone buzzed. A message from my new client, a startup founder drowning in chaos. Luna, you changed my life. My company's revenue is up 30% since you organized everything. My wife says you saved our marriage. Whatever we're paying you, it's not enough. Smiled. They were paying me $15,000 monthly. The doorbell rang. My guests arrived, bringing wine and laughter and stories. We ate and drank and celebrated not just my victory, but the larger truth it represented. Work has value. All work, even the invisible kind. 1 year after the trial, I received an invitation to speak at a women's economic conference. The organizers had followed my case and wanted me to share my story. I almost declined. But then I thought about all the women still trapped where I'd been, unvalued, unseen, doubting their own worth. So I accepted. Standing on that stage, looking out at 500 faces, I told them everything. The accusation, the investigation, the vindication, and most importantly, the lesson. Marcus thought he was insulting me when he said I contributed nothing, I concluded. But he gave me something valuable, clarity. He showed me that I'd been seeking validation from someone who couldn't see me. And in fighting to prove my worth to him, I finally proved it to myself. Ladies, document your work. Know your value. Demand recognition. And if someone tells you that you contribute nothing, believe their actions, not their words. Then do what I did, prove them wrong. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, dozens of women approached with their own stories. Each one a variation of mine. The invisible labor, the dismissed contribution, the fight for recognition. I gave them Dr. Okonkwo's card. Patricia's number. My own consulting information. Because the system that almost destroyed me needed to change. And change starts with information. That night, scrolling through social media, I saw that someone had recorded my speech. Had 2 million views. The comments were full of women sharing their stories, calculating their own worth, demanding their own reckonings. One comment caught my eye. My husband just told me I contributed nothing to our marriage. I sent him this video and Dr. Okonkwo's contact info. Thanks for showing us the way. I smiled, saved the comment and closed my laptop. Marcus had meant to diminish me. Instead, he'd created a reckoning. And I'd turned that reckoning into revolution. Nothing. He'd called it nothing. But nothing can be quite something when you know how to count.